Gruesome Magazine.
Hello once again, I'm Doc Rotten, and this is Gruesome Magazine, where we review the very latest streaming and video on-demand horror movies. Tonight we have something very special for you. We're going to be talking to the writer and director of Psycho Gorman. That's STEVEN Kostanski. I am truly excited to be doing this because this movie made an incredible impression on me, and Dave, you as well. So let's just jump into it and introduce Steven. Steven, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. I mean, not to date the podcast, but, you know, it's the world's pretty crazy right now with the pandemic.
Very much.
America collapsing on itself. So, I mean, it's as good as it's going to get right now, I guess.
Yes. 2021 has certainly been playing a joke on us, that's for sure. But, you know, that's our life. Real quick, for those who don't know, let's just talk about what Psycho Gorman is. We just have a little card here. It is coming out in theaters, on demand, and digital January 22nd. It's written and directed by Steven himself. And it is, Little Girl, Big Psycho. And this movie...
That sums it up.
It does. And this movie is bonkers. The amount of imagination and creativity went into this, Steven, is impressive. And I want to start off finding, like, when did Psycho Gorman, when did it first come into your head? When did you know that this was a film you were going to do?
I mean, I had some images from this movie in my head for, feels like forever now. One of them being a big, like, hulking monster man sitting at a drum set. It just in my head. I didn't know what to do with it, but it made me laugh. And so the legend, as I've been telling it on other interviews, is that I got back from doing Leprechaun Returns, and I was watching movies at home, and I finally got around to watching Rawhead Rex. And as I was watching that, I started riffing on this idea of, like, okay, like, you have, like, this ancient evil that's been resurrected, and, like, is going to terrorize the world, but, like, what are other genres you can mash that with to, like, make something totally absurd out of it, and not just a straight A to B, like, we got one monster story, where it's like you're just kind of following that arc. I wanted to see where I could take it that was a little more insane. And so I decided to mash it with the, like, kids adventure movie, like something like E.T. And I just kept riffing on these ideas of, like, having this ancient evil, like, unstoppable alien overlord that has to answer to these little kids and go on, like, very, like, family entertainment style adventures, like 90s kids movies. It just seemed like such a goofy, high concept that I was surprised it didn't exist already. And so once I came up with that core concept, it was really easy to just, like, hang all the absurd ideas off of it that I could come up with. Like, so much of this movie, and it's displayed in the creature design, the effects. It's like so much of it is just, like, half thought out ideas from other things that I didn't know what to do with, that I just mashed into this movie because the core premise was so simple. It was easy to go on these weird tangents and go to, like, a weird alien council on another planet for a little bit, or have, like, Pete's former minions show up, and, like, every scenario is just an excuse for me to come up with as much wacky shit as I could and, like, just cram it into this story. So yeah, it helped that I had this, like, very simple through line that gave me the latitude to be as absurd as I wanted without feeling like I was totally derailing the plot in the process.
Well, I think you succeeded in that. I think when we reviewed it, we compared it to, like, Trauma and Corman, cranked up to 11, and gory and fun as hell. So good job. Excellent job. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, truly impressive. It really was. I mean, your earlier stuff had really impressed me before. You know, The Void was one of my favorite movies, you know, truly kind of an overlooked gem as far as I'm concerned. But you really nailed it with PG.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I really just wanted to capture the spirit of being a kid, like, growing up in video stores, like, renting movies, renting VHS movies, and, like, in a lot of cases renting movies that were not suitable for a kid my age. And so I have a lot of traumatic memories of renting stuff that was R-rated and being horrified, but also still liking the movie. Like, Terminator 2, I have very vivid memories of watching as a young kid and loving the like chrome robots and purple lasers, but being horrified by all the guys getting their kneecap shot out and like the security guard getting impaled through the eye by T-1000. So like the movie is me attempting to, I guess, deal with that trauma from my childhood by making a movie that is basically a kid's movie for adults where you have all the fun fantasy sci-fi kids adventure tropes of like I'm trying to think of like a good example, like a Ninja Turtles or like Monster Squad or E.T., but then like just also juxtaposing that against really hard, intense, crazy sci-fi action horror tropes, just to try and give it the flavor of those movies of that era that I grew up on, that I'd pick out at the video store.
Yeah, and the humor was a big part of this too. Oh, sorry, Doc, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, it certainly was.
The humor part was such a huge part of this. I mean, I've watched it numerous times at this point, and I find myself laughing hysterically at different points around the film. And then you know, you wrote this, so what did you draw on for that humor? Is that just STEVEN Kostanski's humor, or?
I feel like it's a lot of just me. Almost like imagining I'm watching my own movie and making fun of it, but then making that an extra layer on the script. Because the movie follows a very simple premise, I think, and it adheres to a lot of tropes of these types of movies. I love cliches. I love the cliches of like big spectacle movies from the 80s and 90s. And so I want to embrace those, but make fun of them at the same time. So I think a lot of the humor comes out of me like acknowledging the absurdity of a situation by making it more absurd, or just like try to do the opposite of the expected thing in each moment. And then also a lot of that humor, I got to give credit to the cast, like Adam Brooks specifically. So funny as Greg. He played the pathetic dad so well. We take that character to places that I think in a normal movie under like traditional circumstances where you're financed by like a studio or something, like they would never let it get as crazy as it gets with him or get as stupid as it gets. I'm totally okay with going into the dumbest corners of my narrative and have no shame about it. And so having somebody like Adam pull that off as well as he did, I think is like a real testament to his acting ability, and also like the reason why a lot of the humor lands is because the whole cast is just selling it so well. And it was like a mandate from very beginning in the movie was like, play it straight, take it seriously. Because that's why movies like comedies like Airplane work, is because nobody's winking at the camera. It's like you play it like it's a real situation. If the drama feels real and the characters feel real, then it's funny. But if it feels like everyone is just kind of poking fun at the thing and having too good of a time, I don't think the humor lands. So I think by making the movie as intense as I did, it helped inform the comedy and make the comedy land a lot better, because it's like paired with scenes that are really intense and the actors are really selling that intensity.
Yeah, the actors certainly did their job, and there was it seemed like there was a lot of good chemistry on the set, especially between the three leads, Psycho Gorman and the two kids. You want to tell us a little bit about the three of them?
Yeah, well, like I wrote this treatment and sent it out to our producers, and the note that I got back from everybody was like, yeah, this is a great idea, but like it entirely hinges on your cast and specifically your kids. And so I was warned, like kid actors, like you don't know what you're going to get, like it's going to be super tough, there's all these restrictions. But I just kept pushing ahead because I was like, it feels like it should work, so let's at least try to make this happen. And so we did a very extensive casting process, cast a very wide net to find the perfect actors for Mimi, Luke, and Alistair. And Nita, Hannah, who plays Mimi, like she was in one of the first rounds of auditions, and she even early on, even though like the first tape definitely is not what the character was on screen, like we definitely guided her more into what the character became in the final version. I could see a level of professionalism in that first tape, and there's just so much charm and personality there already. Like, she fully admits that she is kind of Mimi already in her personality.
Oh my.
It did not take that much to get her to where she needed to be because she was already in that kind of mind frame. And then, yeah, Owen and Scout as well. Like, they were just such professionals, like, approaching the material. Like, everybody had everything memorized more so than I did. Like, they just came prepared. And it was like a thing that, you know, up to that point I had been built up as to think like, oh, it was going to be super tough working with kids. And it ended up being like one of the easiest and most fun parts because they were always on top of it. They always knew what the scene was, what they're doing, took notes, took direction. So yeah, I cannot praise them enough. Like, they're really the reason the movie works. Like, they give the movie the heart that it needs. And to then extend that to Matt, who plays PG, you know, I warned him early on. I was like, this is going to be a punishing role for you. You've never done creature acting before. You're in a foam latex suit for 12 hours a day. It is going to suck. I was very blunt and upfront about it. And it was awful, and it was terrible for him, and he had, like, really had to push himself to the limits to pull it off. But he did it, and he did a fantastic job and was able to emote despite being buried under, like, an inch of foam latex every day. So to be able to like do the job, like show up to work every day, and then also push through this added hindrance of being buried in a suit and still give such a great physical performance, like really as a testament to Matt's commitment and just what a great actor he is too. Like, he really did a fantastic job, I thought, playing PG. He gave him so much personality and character without going hammy with it, because again, that was a thing that I was concerned about, is that people were going to kind of like not play it straight, but he played it very straight and gave PG lots of little like weird quirks that I think just helped inform the personality. Like, he, as the movie goes on, you see him become less of this like stoic villain and a little more like sarcastic and dismissive, and it's like fun watching that progression of him becoming a little bit more human throughout the movie. And that's all Matt's performance, and I think probably a little bit of him letting his frustrations of being in that suit in his acting as well. But it all works great, and he just works so well with the kids too. Like, they just had such a fun dynamic. Like, early on, we did a Skype like read through where it was Nita, Owen, and Matt, and you know, up to that point, I was just kind of operating under assumption that things were going to work, and I was just hoping, like, I hope everything lines up. But after that Skype, watching the three of them bounce off of each other, it was so charming. Like, them acting out that first scene where Mimi and Luke first meet PG in the warehouse, it just all came together in that Skype read through. I just really felt like the spirit of the movie come alive in that moment, and I got very excited because I could tell, like, okay, this is going to work. Despite all the like awful things we're going to have to go through to get this done, because it's a super low budget movie. It was a very punishing shoot. Like, in that moment, I still knew, like, we can do this. This will work because I'm seeing it work, even just in this Skype call right now. So yeah, I really lucked out with the cast.
Yeah, and it certainly translates on screen. Now, you mentioned the grueling shoot. Now, you made some bold choices, because a lot of times in a monster movie, you save the monster to the end, but you have Psycho Gorman there almost from the get-go. Not only that, you have dozens of other creatures. Did you ever feel overwhelmed maybe by your decisions?
Yeah.
I mean,
every movie I make this mistake of like writing it, like putting stuff on the page without thinking about the work I'm going to have to do like down the road to make that happen. So I'm always like cursing past Steve as I'm like stuck at the shop like late on a Friday night trying to like scramble to build things for set the next week. But at the same time, it's like I want to make things that are ambitious, that are bigger than they deserve to be, and like exceed the expectations of their budgets. Because I just don't feel like there's enough genre stuff like that out there right now. Like things that really are go for broke and are totally crazy. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of creatures in it, and it was a lot of late nights pulling it all together. But I had a great team of effects artists working on the film. I farmed out a lot of stuff to other effects artists around the city as well to do sculpts and help pull all this together. So it was a real team effort, but then also just a lot of me late at night cobbling things together, which I guess is the curse that will follow me through every project that I
It just seems to be what you do, huh?
Yeah, I think that's just how I make movies. It's a lot of like just me bumbling my way through getting it done on my own because we can't afford to do it any other way. But it's fine. It seems to have worked out so far. I haven't killed myself yet.
And you had some really great creations this one too. The guy with the eyeballs who were rolling in his head. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Thank you.
Just some really innovative stuff, which is hard to pull off these days.
Yes, definitely. Well, every gag, I wanted it to be a surprise, and I didn't want anything to be like particularly gruesome, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want anything punishing. I didn't want the audience to feel like they were watching like martyrs. Like, I wanted the gore to be spectacle. I want it to be like impressive as a visual and like horrifying in concept, but not like, I didn't want to beat up the audience. So it was a lot of just coming, what's like the most absurd thing I can do in this scenario? And just trying to execute that to the best of my abilities and as practically as possible as well.
Did any of the characters, while you were transitioning from drawings and concept onto the screen, did they grow and you use more of them in the movie? Maybe like the zombie cop who was hilarious.
I mean, well, that cop, BioCop, he is actually a character from a short film that I had made a few years back that played at the end of one of my features, Mohr. And so it was an excuse to revisit that character because I really like the idea of a melting cop that just wants to kill himself.
Well, who doesn't? Who doesn't love the idea of a melting cop who wants to kill himself?
Great classic concept. But yeah, I don't know. As far as like just executing these creatures, like I don't have a very traditional approach to design. I know usually you're supposed to like do a drawing and a maquette and then you have meetings and you discuss it. But with this, it was like I had an idea in my head. I'd sculpt part of it. And like I basically, like for some of the creatures, I'd make like the mask that they'd wear. And then looking at that, I'd be like, I'm going to build out from this and kind of find the character as I go. Because I'm a fan of like using found objects and kind of just what's lying around to make my creatures. Find the traditional process of going through the design phases very boring, and I feel like it yields very generic designs because everybody puts their 2 cents in and they end up with like just a very diluted thing. And so it's always this quest for me of trying to find the quickest line from idea popped into my head, thing is on screen, and just get there as quickly as possible. And so it's like building and fabricating as I go and like kind of making things up as problems arise, developing kind of like the look of a creature based on what resources I have at my disposal is like half the fun of making so many wacky wild monsters. And I mean, it helped that I went into it with the intention of kind of going almost like Japanese with it, like Japanese like Super Sentai shows, or like Kamen Rider, having creatures that are more about like style and iconography and less about practicality and realism. Like a lot of the suits in this movie, they're like literally just pullover masks and then like fabricated costumes. But because the details are so bold, they stand out and are iconic in their own way, where it's not necessarily realistic, but it still is effective in my opinion. And so like when I decided to approach this movie with that style in mind, it made everything a lot easier because I knew like, okay, it's not about making these things 100% convincing. It's about making them exciting and fun and interesting. And in a lot of cases, like a lack of mobility in the creatures gave them more personality, where I felt like it gives them like an uncanny quality that you're not expecting, and you're not busy being wowed by like, oh, look at how articulate that animatronic head is. It's like, it's just like a static, scary face of like a lady with her eyes bugging out, like in this like hood. And like, there's just something like weird and unsettling about that I really like. Like the unreality of it makes it more bothersome and interesting to me. So
yeah, I can see that.
So when I settled on that kind of like overall look and vibe for the creatures, it just made everything so much easier because I knew that just focusing on the look and less about the functionality or the realism of it would just kind of just gave me a lot of freedom with the things that I was making.
Excellent. Excellent. As we're wrapping up here, I know that anybody who has seen this movie has got to ask the question, are we going to get more Psycho Gorman?
Say yes. This is where you say yes. Just say yes.
I don't know how or in what form. I mean, I'm working on it. I got ideas for sure. I'm putting stuff down, but I want to see how people react to it as well. Like,
yeah. I think the fans are going to eat this up. I mean, I really do. You can ask Doc. I haven't stopped talking about it since I've seen it. It's already my favorite film of 2021. Nothing's going to knock it off its perch.
So, wow.
So, yeah. Hey, I got to ask you, Steven, because I'm going to forget if I don't. And we interviewed Matt yesterday. I asked him, and he didn't know. But in that warehouse scene, when we first, when the burglars are going through their stuff, there's a picture that's in a frame. And you spend a lot of time with that picture. Did it have any relevance? Was it important in some way?
That was our producer, Shannon. That was for grandparents.
We kind of figured that's what it was. But, I mean, you visited a couple different times.
Really,
and I was just like...
The whole purpose of it was just to like build tension of establishing it in that scene. So then when we see Mimi kick it later, it's like, I just wanted to have a callback so that the audience would remember like, oh, like really make the connection of like, oh, this is where he murdered all those guys. And so that was just like a nice visual cue as like basically just act as a reminder. The only reason was because, as you guys, I'm sure know, like making low budget movies, getting clearance on stuff can be tough. Friends and family to sign off on things to make it easier. So yeah, we used Shannon's grandparents.
You've made them famous. They can do conventions now.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Last question. Are you great or do you suck at Crazy Ball?
I think everybody's crazy. Crazy balls that nobody's good at it.
Only Mimi. Mimi's the only one.
Yep.
Only Mimi, and one moment where Greg is suddenly a stuntman flipping through the air.
Yes.
That one moment he's good at Crazy Ball when he's somebody else.
Oh, well, Steven, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on Psycho Gorman. It is a delightful, funny, gory film that like as Dave said, a top 10 material for certain for us. And
number one, top 10. What are you talking about? Top 10, number one.
2 weeks in, and it's on the perch. Oh my
wow!
goodness.
Thank you very much. 2020 to a good start, though.
Yes, yeah. So thank you for joining us, and Dave, thank you for hanging out with me so we could do this.
Absolutely.
I guess we should go ahead and say goodnight. So say goodnight, Steve.
All right, good night, everybody. Peace.
Thanks, Steve.